Hey, how's it going, do yourselfers? Got a good one for you today. You ever wonder what's up with all the different color polishing pads out there and which one are you supposed to use for what? Or maybe what is the difference between a wool pad and a foam pad? Or why are there so many different rubbing compounds out there? Or maybe you've been wondering about the different types of waxes out there and which one you're supposed to use. Well, wonder no more, because today I'm going to over-explain everything to you. Now, depending on how badly your car's paint is damaged or what you want to do exactly with the paint on your car, you would start with a different type of pad. But now for the purposes of this video, we'll start off with the most aggressive pad, which is made to remove heavy scratches and blemishes, which is the case on this badly neglected paint on this car. Now, for those of you that don't know, when you're polishing or using any of these pads with a polisher on your car's paint, you're only dealing with your clear coat. Now, you might hear terms out there like color sanding or color correction, which could be confusing because that would imply that you might be doing something to the color coat or the base coat and these clear coat, base coat paint systems on these newer cars. But when you're polishing or using any of these or even wet sanding, you're never touching the base coat. You're only dealing with the clear coat. Oh, not so fast. Let me over-explain base coat and clear coat for you. Fresh out of the factory, all the panels on your car are going to be completely bare. Now, in order to protect these panels against rust and corrosion, the panels are usually sprayed with a combination of a primer and a sealer. And next, after the primer, the base coat is sprayed on your car, base coat being the coat that gives your car its color. After your base coat, clear coat is sprayed over it in order to protect it against sun damage and corrosion, but also to give your car that nice shiny gloss. Now, your clear coat also protects your base coat against light scratches and scuff marks. And when you're buffing or polishing your clear coat using these pads, those are the blemishes that you're removing. So again, if you're working on a badly damaged clear coat like we got here with blemishes and deep scratches, what you would start off with is a cutting pad. Now, this could be either a wool pad like we got here or a foam cutting pad like this one. And these are called your cutting pads because, well, let's say you have a scratch in your clear coat that has gone in this deep. Now, the job of your cutting pads, as the name would suggest, is to be used with a polisher and basically cut away at your clear coat to below your scratch and remove it from your clear coat. Now, of course, you use these with the polisher. Now, we won't get into the different types of polishers out there in this video, but there are some pros and cons in using a wool pad or a foam pad as your cutting pad. So, benefits of using a wool pad. Well, the main one is that it cuts faster, as in you spend less time cutting through your clear coat. And since this cuts faster, it's going to mean you're going to spend less time with your polisher going over the blemishes or your clear coat, and that's going to mean you're going to generate less heat and you won't heat up your clear coat and run the risk of damaging your clear coat. That's if you know what you're doing. Now, the cons of using a wool pad are, first, you end up using more compound than if you were to use a foam pad because these fibers soak up a lot of compound. And second, you could also have some marring on your clear coat because of these fibers again. And third, you run the risk of dry buffing because these fibers again soak up all the lubricant that could be in your compound. And if you're not careful, you could damage your paint by dry buffing. Now, as far as what are the benefits of using a foam cutting pad, well, first, they are not as aggressive as a wool pad when it comes to cutting. So that means they're a little bit safer to use than if you were to use a wool pad. And again, unlike a wool pad, they don't need a whole lot of compound, so you would save some money on compound as well. As far as what are the cons when using a cutting foam pad, well, since you're gonna be spending more time with your polisher going over the blemishes than you would with a wool pad, and also because these foam pads generate more heat, you run the risk of using this in the same area a little too much and overheating that area actually and damaging your clear coat. I know it sounds like the pros and cons of these two pads kind of cancel each other out, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're experienced, especially, you use wool pads to remove deep scratches and blemishes. And on the other hand, you use foam pads if you're starting out or to remove just medium scratches or scuff marks. All right, I almost forgot. Now, as far as what's up with all the different color pads and which color is for a cutting pad, that simply depends on which company you buy your cutting pads from. In some companies, the cutting pads are red. In another company, they could be blue. Now, if you're interested in knowing what kinds of pads, compounds, or waxes I personally like to use, I'll put links to where you can find them online down below in the description box, so don't be afraid to click on them and check them out. All right, now as far as what kind of compound you use with these pads, Well, since you're using cutting pads, you want to use a cutting compound. Now keep in mind, some companies may not call their cutting compound, but that's simply in order to confuse you, to get you to think that their cutting compound is not a cutting compound, but rather something different than their competitors, and get you to buy theirs. So in other words, when you're using cutting pads, you use the compound with the most amounts of abrasives in it. All right, next, after you use your cutting compound to get rid of the deeper scratches and blemishes, you move on to your polishing pad. And that's because you might have gotten rid of the scratch with your cutting pad, but your cutting pad has left smaller scratches of its own, and the surface where once your scratch was now might be a little dull. Now, generally speaking, for polishing, foam pads are used. Since you don't need to remove much clear coat, these less aggressive foam pads work fine, plus these have a smooth surface, therefore they help deliver a smoother finish on your clear coat as well. And of course, with your polishing pad, you use a polishing compound. Alright, so after using your polishing pad and polishing compound, you would get rid of the surface that looks like this and replace it with a much smoother looking and polished surface, but there are still some blemishes on the surface, which are basically called swirl marks, which are very tiny scratches on your clear coat that still remain. Now, these could result because maybe you swapped the compounds around and used them with the wrong pad, or if you use the rotary polisher. Now, if you want to get rid of swirl marks, what you wanted to grab is a finishing pad. Now, generally speaking, these finishing pads are the smoothest pads that come in any set from any company. And interestingly enough, most of these pads are black. And of course, you use these pads with the finishing compound or swirl remover in this case. And once more, keep in mind, you want to use the correct pad with the correct compound. You don't want to switch this around, because let's say if you switch these two around, you're going to spend 3 days cutting through some heavy scratches with this compound. And on the other hand, whenever you try to remove swirls with this pad and this compound, you're going to actually be putting more swirls into your clear coat due to the high amounts of abrasives in this cutting compound. Oh yeah, and also depending on the circumstance and depending on how experienced you are, you can use this cutting compound and cutting pads, and from there, skip over the polishing pad and compound and go straight to your finishing pad and swirl remover. But if you're just starting out, or especially if you're using an old school rotary polisher, I suggest you go the 3 steps, and this way it's a lot safer and you lessen the chance of going through your clear coat and you're ruining your car's paint. Alright, so after using our finishing pad with our swirl remover, we were able to get a very smooth, swirl-free finish on our clear coat. So next, it's time to protect all this hard work, but also to make things even shinier. And we do that by putting another coat on top of our clear coat in a form of car wax. Alright, now car waxes come in 3 different forms. So the first type is going to be your sprayable wax. Using these is pretty easy. You just mist it on to a section on your panel. Then you would grab yourself a microfiber towel and then spread it evenly around. Then you simply flip over your microfiber towel onto a dry section and then wipe it off. So the pros of using these spray-on type waxes is that, it doesn't take much time and effort, and you can go through a car using one of these and be done in 30 minutes or so. Now, the cons of using these spray-on waxes are that first, it doesn't last as long as other types, and second, it doesn't give you that nice deep gloss that other types of wax do either. All right, next up, you get your liquid wax. Now you can apply these using a foam pad like this or a dual action polisher. And the way these work is that you get some of this on your foam pad or your finishing pad on your dual action polisher, and then you start applying this on your panels in a circular motion. Then you simply wait for it to dry to a haze, and then you wipe it all down with a clean microfiber towel. Now, these liquid type waxes are not as easy to apply when comparing them to the spray-on types, but they do last a lot longer, and also they give you a much better shine and gloss. Next up, we got our old school paste wax. Now, similar to our liquid wax, these also can be applied using a foam pad. But unlike our liquid wax, majority of these cannot be applied with a dual action polisher. Now, the cons of using these paste type waxes are that, well, it's very hard to apply, as in it's very time consuming and it takes a lot of elbow grease. And also, when this thing dries on your panels and you go to wipe it off, if it gets into small areas and crevices, you might have a hard time reaching in there to completely wipe off your panel. Now, as far as durability is concerned, some people argue that these last longer than liquid wax. Others argue, however, that liquid wax actually lasts longer. But in my opinion, that's really not an issue because at worst, the difference is negligible. Now, however, when it comes to which one gives the best shine, in my personal opinion and experience, these paste-on types give a much deeper gloss to your clear coat. So I would say between the liquid wax or the paste wax, it's simply a matter of personal preference. And the spray-on type is clearly far behind, but again, it's very easy to apply. So that's it. Hope this video answered some questions that you might have had. And remember, if you want to see more videos like this, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, share it on your favorite social network, send me money, your girlfriend, wife, pet, all of which will be sold to the highest bidder and the money used to bring you more videos like this. But if you want to be a buzzkill and not do that, you can also check out these other related videos, of which I put links to on this side of the screen. There will also be links down below in the description box as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.